What do you wish you were taught in school?
What a great way to start. I wish I was taught the things that I have been teaching in my new book, Education is Freedom. And the reason I say that is that in school, I never learned the soft skills. I call them meta skills. And those are things like, we talk a lot about confidence. How do you build confidence, right? Curiosity. How do you nurture curiosity? Character. How do you build character? And is it important? So all of those are things that I call kind of a hierarchy of success that I wish I had been taught in school. I learned them over the years, but I wish I had learned them much earlier.
Yeah, when I was going through school, I thought a lot of the stuff that we learn, not to say it's not applicable for life, but it definitely isn't the core things that help us build our character, that help us really build real skills in life. And I think it's difficult. We were just talking before this of really changing the way that society is teaching in everyday life and the things that we're teaching as well. What do you think that we need most? What do you think needs to shift most?
Yeah, I've been actually trying to advance an idea with the new administration. There's a lot of talk. Obviously, this administration is changing a lot of things. I know people are both sides of the aisle are either upset or overjoyed, but there's just the one thing that's consistent is there's a lot of change. And one of those changes that's been discussed is the elimination of the Department of Education. I've got a different point of view, and here's why. I think the answer for education is engagement. I mean, let's face it, it's a lot more fun to be scrolling on this device than it is to be sitting there in a textbook. And yet we are still teaching and learning the way we have for 100 years, not completely with blackboards and books, but we're not too far from that, right? And so I've got what I call the mega idea, the big idea to transform education. You want to hear it?
Yeah, let's hear it.
All right. So here's the mega idea. Make education great again. Like I said, I put it in terms that this administration could wrap its head around and get excited about. And what do I mean by make education great again? I mean, we have the greatest country in the world because of education, if you think about it. I mean, we have been the model for all other countries. Where do kids in China grow up and want to go to school? They want to go to Harvard. They want to go to Yale. They want to go to Columbia. All over the world, we have people wanting the kind of education we have in America, and yet our numbers have been falling. And the reason our numbers have been falling, and falling pretty badly, our average scores against all industrial nations on things like reading and math, pretty embarrassing. That is leading to fewer and fewer American kids going to college. Compared to China, we've had a complete opposite trend. They've gone from like 40% to 60% of their population graduating from college since 2012. We, during that same period of time in America, have gone from high 50s to we're going to fall below 40% this year. So dial forward. I ran 2 Fortune 500 companies. Where does that put us in the ability to be competitive globally in 20 years? It's like, I don't know. We may be in a world of hurt if we don't double down on the importance of education. So here's the big idea. You ready? All right. Learning is all about curiosity, right? Curiosity starts with engagement. I've got to be interested in something. So why not do for education what we've done for retail? Look how much more interesting it is to just get on Amazon and scroll or eBay and look for stuff, right? Versus walking around the aisles of a grocery store or a department store. Look at what's happened to media and how much more interesting it is to binge watch a movie or a TV series instead of just sitting in a theater, right? So technology clearly works to dial up engagement. So what are we doing with technology in schools? The big idea, not enough.
Yeah.
The big idea is to create the internet of ed tech. Because let's face it, there are a lot of tools out there. Google Classroom, LinkedIn Learning. I mean, hundreds of really good content providers. YouTube is a great learning tool, but it's not accessible in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
So why not build this internet of ed tech where we have simple, easy navigation across all of the ed tech platforms? We create a safe environment so that parents can give their kids any device and say, as long as you're in this environment, I don't care how long you're on your device. In fact, why don't you look at your device during dinner? That's fine.
Before we hop into this episode, I have one favor to ask of you. Over 95% of the people that tune into this podcast are not yet subscribed. And whether it's your first time here or you are a regular listener of the show, I just ask that you hit that button. We've grown over 880% this past year, and I know we are destined to impact so many people in this year of 2025. And the way we're going to do that is by you hitting that subscribe button, you sharing it with a friend that you think will get value from the show, you leave a rating and review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, you leave a comment, a like on this post, and that you get it out to more people, because that is the way we're going to impact more and more people. And the way that I'm going to return the favor to you is by getting more and more guests on the show to help you expand your mind, question your beliefs, and really help you open your mind up to how good this life can really get. And I'm going to do that by having interviews and conversations with exceptional people. And it's just going to get better and better. And I hope that you stick along for the journey and then you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. Let's hop into the interview.
Anyway, so this idea is that we would engage young people where they live and play, which is in digital world, in the metasphere. And so why not create the best ed tech platform anywhere in the world? And here are other elements of it. You light up every classroom. So instead of blackboards, we have LEDs in every classroom.
Mm-hmm.
You can now take students right into, in a biology class, right into an OR, watch a heart surgery, live, right? You can animate with AI any static image. So you can take a Renoir or a Van Gogh and make it come alive.
Yes, I've heard you speak about this. Yeah.
Like the immersion experience.
Mm-hmm.
It makes art and art history just come to life, right? You can make it simple to move from school to school. You can, because your transcripts are all protected in a blockchain secured environment.
Mm-hmm.
You can offer scholarships before you graduate, not after.
Mm-hmm.
So why not 6th and 7th grade, every time you pass a test, have Deloitte give you 20 cents because you passed a math test. You may be a future accountant. And you build a 529 tax-free blockchain secured savings account for college from the time you're in the 5th or 6th grade. All of these things are possible in the technology world. It's just that we haven't yet applied those capabilities to education. So that's the big idea, the internet of ed tech.
I love it. And I think it's fascinating to me to think that what is driving our future is education, yet it's been the same for, it feels like, a billion years. Like nothing has changed. And it's really disappointing that it is that way. And one thing that I love the incentivizing. So 20 cents, you maybe not think about it, but over the years it adds up. One thing I think is really difficult for people, and I'm 21, so like I'm like your target audience for so many things. And I think a lot of the people that listen to the show will really get a lot of value from what you're putting into the world. One thing that I think is difficult for a lot of people going into college is they don't know what they want to do, right? Like you thought you wanted to be a lawyer. And so when you're getting into it, you're not really supposed to know, but you have to try things out and figure things out. I think a lot of people are asking the wrong questions to figure out, because people always ask, what do you want to do? Or what do you want to be when you grow up? And how am I supposed to know? I don't know where I'm going to be in 2 years, 10 minutes. Things change so quick and you have to be open to that change. But so many people are asking the wrong questions to figure out where we can go to move down the right path. Do you have questions that have helped you make decisions over the years?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a great example. You're right. I wanted to be a lawyer. Before I wanted to be a lawyer, I wanted to be a doctor. Yeah. I would have been an awful doctor. It's just like gross. I can't even imagine having to do the stuff that doctors do. But so I would have made a terrible doctor, but people are encouraging everyone to specialize so early these days. You're exactly right. And I know there's a lot of question now about, is college even important? Well, here's why college is important. College just exposes you to more things than you get otherwise in your hometown, in your family, with your circle of friends, because you just don't have exposure to different subjects, different careers. So I know there's a lot of criticism about, how are you ever going to get a job with art history or humanities or theology.
Communications. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But you're still learning, and that's what's important. You're learning and you're growing and you're building a worldliness and awareness of out there that'll help you shape what you are good at and what you want to be down the road. That's
Yeah.
what I'm trying to light up with technology because we can open that aperture so much more and let people know. I'll give you an example. There's an influencer in New York that named Gabe, and he is doing something really cool. He brought me into a pizza store, and we had a session on me making pizzas, learning how to make pizza. And what he's doing is he's basically taking people into a job for a day to be able to say, how'd you like to do this?
Yeah.
Here's what goes on behind the scenes in a pizza shop. And ideally, when he assembles this whole mass of content, you can make that available in this internet of ed tech that I'm talking about. And now I would have been able to say, wow, I get to sit in the right seat with a pilot for a day and see what his day is like. Do I really want to do that? Maybe not. It's kind of like driving a bus. Looks
Yes.
sexy, but for a whole day, maybe it's not that interesting, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Cool
Yeah.
opportunities.
Yeah. And it's needed. I think that's one of the difficult things about education or college in that sense. Or even for me, when I grew up and I went through high school, I felt like it was a waste of my time in the sense that, I mean, you can see behind me, I'm a big learner. I love reading. I love putting myself in positions to get on knowledge. But a lot of what I realized was when you don't experiment, say in school, and you're not putting yourself in those positions to see what it's actually like, I think it's one of the biggest reasons that most people go through college and change their major 50 times because they realize that after a couple months or even after a year, this isn't what I want to do. And then they get distraught with decision fatigue and then they don't know what they want to do. And I think that's a really difficult thing. So I think experimentation and actually putting yourself in those positions is probably the best thing that we can do.
No, that's exactly right. And the other opportunity is what you could do online with this internet of ed tech is to link companies in, so you can actually work virtually for a company while you're in high school.
Mm,
And I got to tell you, when I was in college, the best thing I could have done is to do an internship at a law firm because I was sitting there all day long during a summer going, this is a terrible job. Would I have to do this for the rest of my life? Grunt through these boring contracts and look at these, and literally help me make up my mind that I don't think I want to be a lawyer. I think business will give me more of an interesting day and that nothing will ever be as the same as if I was a lawyer going through contracts all day. So yeah, the opportunities are huge to link companies into the school, into each kid. So let me explain that a little further. So let's say right now, your transcripts are like locked up somewhere, and I couldn't reach you as a student when you were still in school because of all these safety laws and child safety laws and all this kind of stuff. So as a company, 7-Eleven, Blockbuster, I had hundreds of thousands of jobs that I could have offered. But there was a firewall between me and any of the students. So I couldn't even say, hey, instead of putting a call center in India, what if I light up students at, you know, Georgia Tech and let them man a call center while they're in school? Because they can be studying while they're, taking calls for a call center. But I couldn't do that in the past. In the future, in a blockchain secured environment, I can actually reach out, look at resumes anonymously. I don't even have to know who you are and say, this student would be a perfect fit for this role. I'm going to offer them a job and then make that connection so that now you're not only employed, you're learning a new industry,
mhm.
and I can be feeding scholarship money into your 529 tax free account as a way to help you earn your way into other degrees.
It's incredible. I mean, it's really incredible. I mean, one of the best things that I did when I was in high school was I thought I wanted to be a real estate agent. So I thought the best thing to do was go find a real estate team, like put myself in that position, be an intern, whatever, not being paid, just figure out if I like to be around that kind of environment to see what they're really doing. And I really don't think in the world today we put ourselves in a position to I would say look like a fool, not have things figured out, be a beginner at things. Like when I ask people, when's the last time that you put yourself in a position where you didn't know what the outcome was going to be? Most people don't have an answer. And it's really
Right.
sad to see that's where the world is.
No, it's true. It is. There's so much fear of failure out there, and people are just unwilling to make that leap. And yet, that's how you learn. That's the irony, is that it's trial and error. And this is another advantage of technology, that you can try and fail online without the shame and embarrassment of doing it in person. Sometimes it's a way to help us get over our fear of failure.
Yeah. When you got started at 7-Eleven, because you grew that company in such a way, 20 years there, and really put yourself in almost every position. And I think that that's such a way against what most people say to do, right? Go towards your strengths, don't try a bunch of different things, stick at what you're doing and just continue getting better at that. I assume, especially when you got started, there was a lot of hesitation to do so from your peers and other people telling you different things. What made you want to just try everything, it seems?
Yeah, partly is that curiosity. I didn't know what I was good at, right?
Yeah.
And so I was just experimenting and trying. And I think the biggest difference, you hit on something so important. I didn't have any fear of failure.
Yeah.
So if I get into a financial role and I'm not good at it, okay, I'll go back to an operating role. What did I have to lose? But if I win, I'm successful, it's going to help me later on in my career, because now how many people have both operating and financial experience, right? So this idea, in fact, I've been talking a lot about this as I've been out talking about education, especially now in the information age, especially in a world of AI. Think about how deep AI is going to go in any given subject.
Even now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Already. I love to fly. As you can see from the background,
Hmm.
my office is like an aviation museum. I love to fly. I could have been a pilot. I could be a pilot technically today. But if I was 21, it would be tempting, but it would also be risky in the sense that autonomous aircraft are coming. My airplane, basically, I take off and land. Otherwise, I'm managing systems the whole time. And they already have the capability to take off and land. So autonomous aircraft are coming. So let's say you choose aviation as a career. Technology may eliminate that career in the next 20 years.
Hmm.
Then what? If you don't have the ability to pivot, if you haven't had breadth of education and knowledge, and you went deep instead on any one subject, you may find yourself now at 40 having to learn a new skill,
Hmm.
as opposed to being able at 40 to pivot into something else. Don't bat an eyelash, you just go do something else.
Yes. And that's why, again, I think the idea of what do you want to be when you grow up is such a terrible question to ask, because it is putting you in a box to this is your identity here. Figure out what your identity is going to be for the rest of your life. Yet you don't open your mind up to realizing that, especially if you're putting yourself in a position at a company or as an entrepreneur in general, there is not one skill that you can just have and that is going to be the skill that you need. You need so many different skills, and that's going to require you to be in so many different positions. And to think that you need to stay in one place. I want to go to change, because change is CEO, change equals opportunity, which I love that you coined. And I think a lot of people have a tough time with change, of course. And similar to you, I've had a lot of change in my early ages that really were an opportunity for me in such a way. And I think a lot of people see change as a difficult thing. What do you feel is the biggest misunderstanding people have about change?
It's the fear. People don't, uncertainty is scary,
Yeah, of course.
right? Let's face it. And I compare it to being in the dark. A lot of people are afraid of the dark. You get in a dark room and you can't see, that's uncertainty. And that's scary. And that's what change represents. Change is like, the room is light, and all of a sudden I turn out the lights. Now I can't see. Now I'm uncertain. Now I'm scared. And ironically, and what I've been out teaching in my book, in Education is Freedom, is the idea that the more you learn, the less you have to fear. And there's this really magical balance between reason and faith, that reason is learning, right? I will dig into facts and I'll learn. And as a human, I have the ability to think and to reason. But then I also have to have some belief in something. If nothing else, take religion out of it, a belief in myself, a belief in the universe, that if I try hard enough, I will be successful. And so this balance of faith and reason are like a double shield against any kind of fear. There's absolutely nothing that a human has to fear because we have no natural predators. What do we, unless we're out surfing maybe and get eaten by a great white, but day in, day out, what in the world are we afraid of?
Yeah. I think we have so much we're so overstimulated with so many different things coming in our ears that we're fed fear. I mean, in a way, in so many ways we're fed fear. So there's not necessarily any primal reason to have fear. And I want to go back to something that you were talking about earlier, because I use this analogy all the time for people that are afraid to leave their job or to do something new. I would say, well, what's really the worst possible outcome if you really play into it? You go to the new job, you fail, you make no money, and you end up right back where you were. So you're at the exact same place. So your worst possible outcome is your current situation. And it is mind boggling to me that people continue to stay in something that they're unhappy with rather than doing something different because they're uncertain about it. And that goes back to the uncertainty thing. And I think that faith, that belief, that knowingness that things are working in my favor is something that I've really taken on the past few years, and it's done me well. And I just say yes to things. And I think a lot of people have hesitation, but I'm curious for you because I think most people say no to things when they don't have the privilege to actually say no. Like they're not really in a position to be able to say no. When you were growing up and you were saying yes to all these different careers, did you always have that faith, that trust in yourself, or how did that develop?
I wish I could pinpoint the stage in my life when I recognized that I just had to say yes and accept opportunity because there is, and maybe I had an advantage because if I had grown up in a very prosperous family with everything laid out, my entire path, you're going to go to college, you're going to do this, you're going to go to graduate school, there would have been expectations for me, I think, that would have probably stifled some of that opportunistic alternative. And so, since I didn't have that path, I had absolute wide open aperture to explore anything and to do anything. It's like, what do I have to lose? Give it a try, right?
Yeah.
I've kind of nurtured that all along. Today, people go, "What are you going to do after your book? You've been spending the last year touring the world and speaking about education in your book. What's next?" And I go, "I don't know." But the opportunities keep coming, and they're fascinating opportunities. I may go work for the administration and help build the internet of EdTech, or I may go take on a new aerospace company and build rockets or airplanes, next generation airplanes. I don't know.
And you're not supposed to know. And I think that's one of the core beliefs that is so foundationally wrong, that you're supposed to know how your life is supposed to just unfold in so many ways. And I use the analogy of like, if you knew how your day was going to go every single day, there would be nothing to be excited for. There'd be nothing to
Exactly.
look forward to. And I think it's just something we need to let go of. When you were doing research for the book, I mean, for so many people, at least a lot of authors that I've been able to speak to, the book that they get the most from isn't the one that they read, but it's the one that they write, right? So you're diving so deep into a topic and diving and learning and researching. What surprised you in doing the research for this one?
The thing that surprised me the most, as you said, is how much I learned. I mean, I wrote a book about learning. And then as I was researching, one of the things, a great example, I started digging into Socrates, Plato,
Hmm.
Aristotle, right? The old philosophers. I hadn't learned this stuff since I was in high school. And yet I was digging in and I was like, damn, how did they know so
They
much?
knew it all. They knew it all.
It was
Socratic
shocking.
method, all that kind of stuff. It's insane.
It was shocking how much they knew about humanity and how much we've forgotten. And if we just go back to those basics that the philosophers knew and told us 1,000, 2,000 years ago, it's really pretty shocking. So, yeah, that was one of my learnings.
Do you have a strategy for learning?
I think well, yes, it literally is laid out in the book. It's what to learn, how to learn, and why.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and the let's say how to learn. If you were to say, do you have a strategy? It's to ignite that curiosity. 'Cause curiosity is absolutely the foundation, and critical thinking when it comes to decision making is something that many of us miss completely. It's like, oh, decision making. Well, I saw this on the internet, so therefore I'm going to get angry about it and go down this path.
Hmm.
We don't stop and think, and there's a process that I have tried to nurture. It's critical when you're running a business to not react to stimulus, but instead to use data to make informed decisions.
When you were at Blockbuster, I'm pretty sure you said that you learned more in 5 years at Blockbuster than you did at 20 years at 7-Eleven.
I did.
What was it about that situation? Of course, I mean, there was so much change going on, so I could assume that had a big impact, but what
Yeah.
was it about that situation that stressed you more?
It's just the constant change. I joined the company to help make a transformation from
Yeah.
physical to digital. And
Yeah.
then the whole market collapsed. And I went from managing a transformation, business transformation, to rescuing a company with a broken balance sheet in a financial market that had collapsed globally.
Mhm.
And two entirely different skill sets, two entirely different challenges, two entirely different sets of external or macro dynamic. And so, yeah, it was a fascinating and very powerful learning experience. I wouldn't want to do it again. Once in a lifetime is enough, but actually, I would like one more shot at it, because there are some decisions that I think if I had them back, had I had a crystal ball and known that the financial markets were to collapse, I would have done a lot of things very differently.
Well, you wanted to take it private anyway, right? And so, like, it seems like you did the best that you could in a way.
Well, thank you for knowing that, James. You've obviously done your homework. I did get to Blockbuster with the effort to take it private because I knew that the transformation necessary for Blockbuster was going to be very difficult to accomplish in a public company environment. Public companies are held to very, very tight results on a quarter by quarter basis. And Blockbuster needed a 2, 3, 5 year transformation, business transformation. I knew that would be more easily done in a private environment. What I didn't know was the critical importance of refinancing the debt in 2007, which we would have done had we taken it private, which would have given us clear sailing through the financial crisis because we had no inherent cash flow issues at all other than the debt.
Yeah, to look back, I've heard so many interviews with you on it, and to be $1 billion in debt seems insurmountable, but to understand where the company was, where it could go, a few critical decisions, and it goes to the critical thinking that we have. One of the things I think people don't think about when it comes to education is they think intelligence, but not emotional intelligence. That I think is one of the core foundations. That another thing we're not really taught. Out of the 9 C's that you have, what do you think is the most overlooked?
The last, and
Character.
I'm going to give you, since you brought up emotional intelligence, I'm going to give you a little formula, because we all know what IQ is, right? And that's measurable. Some people have a little more intellectual horsepower than others just based on the intelligence quotient, right? And then there's the emotional quotient, right? So that means some people have more ability to calm their reaction to things and use information. And I call that knowledge. So that you've got raw intelligence, IQ, plus EQ, emotional quotient, is knowledge. And knowledge is a good thing to have. And you go, but why is it that really, really knowledgeable people sometimes do some really stupid things? Right? And I struggled with that in the book. And I was like, damn, how do I explain that? And I went back in history. I found some fascinating things like militant ignorance,
Hmm.
where you absolutely have IQ, have EQ, and yet your friends and family are all believing so strongly in something that may be false
Hmm.
that you believe it too, darn it, and you get militant about protecting that, even though you know it's wrong. History is littered with those kinds of situations. Really intelligent people were lured into doing some really stupid things. So here's the antidote to that: IQ plus EQ plus, this is the missing piece,
Hmm.
I call it CQ.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's the character quotient. That those three things now, IQ plus EQ equal knowledge, IQ plus EQ plus CQ plus your character quotient, now I think give you wisdom. Wisdom is what those ancient philosophers had. And that wisdom piece, that CQ piece, comes with it's the character quotient,
Hmm.
which is your integrity, your humility, your gratitude, your compassion for others, your understanding of humanity. Those basic elements of character are kind of like the brand that's across our chest. So
Yeah.
just like we like Coke versus Pepsi, we have a brand. And that character, that what's inside of us and who we are, that represents our brand. And so, yes, I do think that there is something called wisdom that really comes from too often experience. But the question is, can we learn it? And
Mhm.
that's what I'm trying to teach. The power of character and the importance of things like humility and gratitude and compassion and integrity in our day-to-day lives that will help us make that leap from just being smart to being wise.
Yeah. Yeah. I heard you speak about that in previous podcasts, of course, and I wanted you to break it down because I think it's something is missed in the world, right? I mean, when people think of hiring or when people think of the job that they're trying to get, they never think of, well, I don't think a lot of time we think of how do I carry myself? How do the brand of me look, right? If I have the skills, if I have the knowledge, that should be enough. But the way that you carry yourself and the way that you show up has so much more of an impact than really anything else because that integrity, that confidence to show up to know that you can provide more to the company than the company could even provide for you in a sense. You were indisputable in that way, with 7-Eleven especially, and you build that for yourself. But were you always thinking of how am I branding myself? Because even your brother like thought that you just got lucky kind of thing, but you created your luck, and I think of that in the same sense.
It wasn't a conscious thing, and that's the advantage now that I have to look back and help others. That when I was 21, I wish someone had said to me, "Hey, brand matters." I had to learn it over time, and I did learn it, and I learned it through experience. The harder I would work, the more I'd be recognized for it, those kinds of things. But I never put it together until I sat back and again went back through history and tried to learn from others and said, we are we're like we're like products.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, think about it, and not just in the business world, but in the personal world too. If you're in school and you want friends, well, it's hard to make friends if your brand is not good. And it's no different than standing in front of the shelf and looking at a whole array. Maybe as a retailer, I can see this better than most, but got a whole array of products. What do I pick? Well, it comes down to how does each brand differentiate itself to make you as a customer want to grab that brand and to make it part of your life.
yeah. It's fascinating to me because I feel in such a way with this kind of stuff, it isn't thought about. It's the unseen things that really usually matter the most. We're not taught them, of course, but even the cultural literacy is one of them was something that I don't really find in many books. The idea of cultural literacy, and it was something that before I got into my 20s, you're always told solo travel is such an empowering thing, and I've really ingrained that in my life in so many ways, and I think it's one of the most powerful things to do because you gain perspective in so many different ways. But when you were all of this kind of stuff, character, integrity, collaboration, all of the different things that you talk about, you can almost see it in the way that you speak and what you talk about specifically. Looking back now, is there a less obvious reason that you found success or something that you didn't realize really gave you more power?
I didn't know that these meta skills, as you've described them, these things that aren't seen, they're not measurable. How do you measure curiosity, right? How do you measure
Yeah.
creativity? But though it literally wasn't until I sat down and put the book together that I realized I was trying to answer the question in the book. What was it that made me different from my brothers and sisters or peers or whatever? And it wasn't just raw intelligence. It wasn't even emotional quotient because I have my moments too as a
We're
as
all
a
human.
person.
Yeah.
But it was those soft skills. It was those things because I am curious. I am creative. I play all kinds of instruments and paint and do things to nurture that creativity. Those soft skills really are important. And they end up, as you said, they end up being my brand. And I think that brand served me well in the business community.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's like you said, it can do with business, with friends that you want to attract, partners that you want to attract. Instead of trying to change other people think about who is the kind of person that I'm showing up as, because you're going to attract those kind of people. So if you're not happy with the people that you're surrounded by, you need to take a good look at yourself, because that's the kind of people you're attracting in that way. And it's so funny, we want to push off that responsibility in a sense. And I feel more and more, because we see anomalies in so many different scenarios in life, especially in business as well, we feel it's possible for us. And I like to believe that it's possible, but that's if you take the responsibility and realize that the opportunity isn't just going to come to you. You have to be the one that creates the opportunity. And I think these meta skills, as you're speaking about, are the things that have the biggest impact on that opportunity being created, really.
I think you're right. They do. And one of the things I'm digging into now, James, that I'm still learning, obviously, and this idea of learning to learn is I'm now having to live the example of the book. So I'm digging into a little bit of neuroscience, and
Love it. Yep.
yeah, and it's fascinating what I'm learning. Just this whole idea of us basically being a source of energy,
Hmm.
that we are, yes, we're in these meat bodies, but it's the energy within us that make us who we are. And with any energy source, it's just fascinating to dig into some science and see what, I don't know if you've ever seen this. Someone pours salt out on a table and then puts different music behind it, and the different vibrations, the different frequencies cause an entirely different patterns in the salt. And you can do the same thing with water or ice. And our bodies are so much basically water that we then have this energy that we're giving off and other people give off. And if someone has negative energy to us, someday science will be able to measure what that actually does to us.
Hmm.
Because it does make physical changes and mental changes in our reaction to that other person. So if that's true, and if other frequencies can have a negative impact on us, just as they would that table with salt or a bowl of water in front of us, well then, if we're conscious of the energy that we're putting out there to the universe,
Hmm.
positive energy will attract positive energy and create opportunity, as opposed to negative energy being out there that is doing sometimes just the opposite.
100%. Yeah, I've had a lot of neuroscientists on the pod. I find it fascinating, and I find a lot of people after their career seem to jump into neuroscience. I mean, I had a Navy SEAL on last week that's friends with Andrew Huberman, one of the biggest neuroscientists in the world, and he just dives more and more into it. And it seems so fascinating, because I think so many of us are fascinated by why we do the things that we do and what's driving us, and so many other things. And I think it's fascinating. And energy really is a big thing. I mean, I think it is. I think you attract what you're giving out into the world, and if you're not being intentional about that, people always wonder why opportunities aren't coming into their life. Maybe you're not looking for them. Maybe you're not being the kind of person that's ready to receive them. You've always been open to receiving. It seems that way, especially with the jobs and the things that you've done. You've done so many different things and tried so many different things out. Even the hobbies that you've done, like you said, flying and painting and music and so many other things. What's helped you develop that muscle? Of course, looking back, it wasn't probably conscious growing up, but how have you developed that muscle over time? Just that intuition, I guess.
Yeah, it's just that curiosity, that raw curiosity. If I see something on TV, I see polo. Oh, I like horses. I like sports. I like football. I like soccer. Wow, polo looks like it's a combination of golf, soccer, and horseback riding. Maybe I should try it. So and sign up for polo lessons. And the next thing I know, I'm in Argentina at an estancia, and I do stick time in the morning, and then I get into a game in the afternoon, and I'm out there playing polo, and I go, wow, this is an adventure. And this is and it doesn't have to be that elaborate, because some of your listeners are going, oh yeah, he's got money, he can do this, he can do that. And the same thing, you can have the same experience at a local state park, doing something that looks interesting, hiking, mountain climbing, rock climbing. It doesn't require money to turn day-to-day life into an adventure. And I think that's the way, James, I would describe it. That at the end of the day, when I wrote this book, Education is Freedom, it wasn't education is money, education is wealth,
Yeah.
education is success, none of that stuff. Freedom is a really important word, because I literally wake up every day and I can't wait to see what happens. Because every day for me represents a new opportunity for a new adventure. That is freedom.
100%. I think a lot of people in a situation similar to yours play the wealth game too long, and they never seem to realize that that's not the game that they want to play. They're unconsciously choosing that game, but it seems most people are choosing that game without even realizing it. And it's disappointing to see. And I'm similar to you in the sense that growing up, I'm grateful that I lost my father, my uncle, my grandfather at a young age, because it made me realize mortality in such a way. And similar to you, in so many different bad things that happened were the catalyst to help me become the person that I am. And I think it really is one of those things that you have to be able to take a different perspective on. I mean, when you were writing this first book, you wanted to name it a self-help guide for humanity. And so in such a way, I mean, I understand why the publisher probably went against it, but I also understand why you wanted to create it that, because education truly is everything. If you have enough information, you can make the right decisions. What do you feel is the core message that you're trying to put out into the world?
Well, that the subtitle of the book that I did settle on is the core message: the future is in your hands. And it's another way of saying this is a self-help guide for humanity, because so many of the problems that we see in the world, so many of our individual problems are self-imposed, and they're us being afraid, being, self-critical, being, just tanking our own happiness or our own success unnecessarily. So yes, I set out to write a self-help guide for humanity because I realized it's just not about money. It's not about fear. It's not about continuing success. It's about living a very full life that any of us can do and can find if we open up our hearts and minds to it.
Yeah. When you've taken on each role, it seems as though, and correct me if I'm wrong, you took on more than you could handle in a sense. You right, and I think that that's one thing I put on to so many people is just take on, say yes without knowing how it's going to work out, and whether you fail or you succeed, whatever you define as success. I mean, that's another question. But what skill set do you think, looking back, served you the most? I mean, from 7-Eleven to Blockbuster. I mean, you had to learn a lot of different skills, I would assume. Which one do you think had the most leverage for you?
Communication, probably. If you were to nail me down, I mean, probably the single biggest trait I had was this openness to say yes, willingness to say yes, willingness to try new things, all that kind of stuff. But if you're looking for a skill set, I really worked on my communication skills. I was dragged into a play in high school, and a couple of my buddies like shamed me into showing up for a rehearsal, taunted me into showing up for a tryout for a play. And I get on stage and I'm reading for the part. I get the part. Now all of a sudden I'm in a play. I'm like,
Right.
great. What do I do with this? And it was fun. It turned out to be a lot of fun being part of a cast and all that kind of stuff. And what I didn't realize is how important that learning experience was to being able to, many years later, stand on a stage with 5,000 people and be comfortable with it and actually enjoy it as an experience, which is so counter to what most people feel when they walk onto a stage with 50 people, never
Yeah.
mind
And
5,000 people.
yeah, yeah.
So it was this, and it was a big building block in my ability to communicate. So that, I think that skill set, the ability to read, write, speak, communicate in simple terms, really helped make a big difference in my differentiation. Again, that brand, who is Jim? Well, you can put him in front of a board and he's fine. Or you can put him in front of a group of blue collar workers and he's fine because he's been in both.
Yeah, it's crazy to me that we can communicate. We have a language to communicate, yet so many of us don't think about, oh, that's probably one of the best skills that I can learn is to be able to communicate with people. And when COVID happened, I think we just let go of the desire to learn that skill in so many ways. And I'm so grateful for the podcast because it's been able to help me really develop that skill in so many ways. I know when you were one of your first jobs, I think one of the pieces of advice, and they got mad at you, fight happened, you left the company because of it, because you were working too hard. And that was a piece of advice that you're glad that you did not take on. Is there a piece of advice looking back now that you wish you received?
Yeah, it's not personal
Mm.
because in that environment, you can't help but take it personally, right? Especially when someone's pounding your
Yeah.
face.
Right. Falling down the stairs. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so yeah, you fight back. Then you think, you start playing all the head games. Oh, is it my fault? Is it me? What's wrong with me? Why can't I get along? All that kind of stuff. It was never about me. It was always about the other person. It was their fear. I was going to screw up their life. I was going to screw up their rate of success. I was going to make them have to work hard. So it was a great example that helped me build a thick coat of armor, if you will, because I encountered the same thing in a white collar environment as I had in a blue collar environment. There are people that just didn't want to work as hard. And if you go all the way back, it was the same thing that we faced in grammar school. If you were the kid that raised your hand and the other kids weren't happy about it, and they'd make fun of you because you're the one that wanted to please the teacher and succeed.
It is crazy to me, and I really hope it's going down from this perspective, but I feel it is looked at as embarrassing to try at things,
Yeah.
where we have such a fear and such a tendency to hold ourselves back from putting ourselves in a position to actually seem like we're trying at something, and it's mind-boggling to me that that's where the world is today.
But it's not just today. It's always been
It's
that way,
always been, I
James.
guess so, yeah,
It's
it's
always
just
been.
crazy to me.
And like I said, I'm writing the book, and I'm thinking, when did I first start feeling that pressure to conform, right? And it was all the way back to grammar school because I was ridiculed for raising my hand, and in my case, it was kind of survival. It was like, wait, I don't have a family back there to catch me, no safety net. I better get a good grade, and I better keep working hard. And yet, others saw me as a threat to them. And so, yeah, at a very early age, I realized it's not about you. It's about others and their jealousy of you, their insecurity, their fear. I wish I knew that back then because I would have had my feelings hurt less. And it was ultimately building that resistance to letting someone else hold me back, letting someone else create my identity and conform to their identity, conform to their fears. I fought that my whole life. And today now I realize it was, and it took many years to realize, it was never about me. It was always about them and their insecurity. Once you realize that, it creates a superpower in you to be able to show up in the New York Post with a full page picture of yourself with a Pinocchio nose.
Yeah,
And you don't you're not ready to jump off a cliff because something like that happened.
yeah. I think too, and I think we're similar on this in the sense that your the things that you once thought were the thing that held you back are the exact thing that helps you propel forward in life. Like for me, I didn't have any role models, and I used to think that I had no one to look to think this is what I should do. And I realized really young that it was one of the best things that I could have because I had no expectation of what I'm supposed to do. And so
Exactly.
I'm so open to things. And I think I wish people, and that's why I love your story so much because I mean, from a shack with 6 kids and mom that left at 5, you had so many trials and tribulations in your early childhood to help you become the person that you are. And people look down on that in so many ways. And I think a lot of people look down on, situations that are difficult to go through. But I don't know anyone that has done exceptional things that have not been through some difficulty, at least a little bit of it. So just exceptional to see what you've done.
No, it's very true. And here's an interesting thing, James, that I get asked all the time. It's like, well, what about my kids? Because some of my friends have done really well, and now they're worried about their kids. It's like, what do I tell them? And what I tell them to share with their kids is that it doesn't have to be bone crushing, terrible adversity. We all have adversity. Something in our life is not good. And if we can see that adversity not as a problem and in turn turn it around and see it as a way to build strength, build muscle, then we can do the same thing. You don't have to go through what you went through or what I went through to turn adversity into opportunity.
The question that changed my life really was changing the question from why is this happening to me to how is this happening for me? And when you change the question that you ask, you're going to get a different answer. But again, we're not really taught the questions that we're supposed to ask. So we ask disempowering questions that give us disempowering answers that, in turn create the actions that we take in the life that we create. There's one last question I ask every guest. And
Hang on, hold that question because I
give it to
want
me.
to drill into that just a minute.
Yeah.
James, that was for a 21-year-old man, that was one of the most insightful things I've ever heard. That idea that why is this happening to me versus why is this happening for me is such a powerful concept that forget everything else I've said. That alone will make it worth watching this podcast. It's a powerful, powerful concept. And congratulations to you for knowing this at 21 years old, because that really will power your success for the rest of your life.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah. And I mean, you're able to see every opportunity or every disempowering thing as an opportunity because it's building you to the person that you're supposed to be. I mean, even if it wasn't, the belief that it was is more helpful than believing that it wasn't. And so you can choose your beliefs, but we're not really told that either, which is a whole nother conversation. But okay. Last question I ask every guest encapsulates really what I want to do with this podcast. I think of, similar to you, a lot of learning that we learn in life has to be unlearned in a way as well. A lot of learning, we need to know when to unlearn things too. So my question to you is, what belief are you currently unlearning?
That's the hardest question you've asked.
Usually is. No one ever has had to answer exactly.
No, that's a tough one. I am trying to unlearn impatience
Mm,
because even though I'm out there teaching resilience and strength and opportunity and every day is an adventure, I'm like, come on, I gotta go. What's my
type A.
and yeah, and that impatience is probably not healthy because I need to relax more and let things occur as opposed to I'm still guilty and have always been guilty of trying to force an issue. Great example, Blockbuster. Had I waited 1 year to join Blockbuster, I would have been able to join them in the midst of the economic crisis,
Hmm.
probably taking them through a restructuring and built what I wanted to build on the other side. I was impatient. I was like, come on, I gotta go, do this now. And that impatience basically cost me what could have been a successful transformation because I got caught up in the financial crisis instead. But yeah, I'm trying to unlearn my natural tendency to say, let's go, come on now. Gotta make it happen.
Yeah, it's funny because that's the thing that's got you where you are too. That impatience to make things happen, that bias towards action. So it's funny. Our biggest strength is usually the thing that if we don't have it under control, if we don't have that EQ, that IQ to be able to recognize where it's hurting us, it's going to tear us down in so many ways. So yeah, it's empowering. It's good to hear. All of your links and everything will be in the show notes, of course, of the book and everything that you're doing in the world. But is there anywhere you'd like to direct people?
JamesWKeys.com. It's my website. I'd encourage you to follow me if you want to hear more of these stories on at JKeysAuthor. And I'm on LinkedIn, James Keys. And then educationisfreedombook.com is, of course, where the book resides. And I'll keep doing some things. I did a deal with Mr. Beast and some worldwide scholarships. So it was kind of fun. I hope to do more of that kind of stuff on educationisfreedom.com.
Beautiful. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, James. This was fun.